the legal landscape. And especially at this time, it's so important because there are so many persons who are looking at starting a business or may have already started a business. Well, we're in the right place. What are your options? That's what we're looking at today. The Jamaica Information Service recently reported that the Companies Office of Jamaica is projecting that 2022 will be a record-breaking year for the registration of businesses and companies in Jamaica. The COJ, Companies Office of Jamaica, stated that registrations for 2022 are on track to surpass the 17,039 business names and 4,878 new companies registered in 2021. These figures reflect that the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well in Jamaica. Persons are therefore actively investing their resources to start businesses of their own. Now, as with virtually all ventures, prior to starting, a decision has to be taken on the type of business ownership a new investor would like to pursue. And in this episode, we'll discuss two of the most common types of businesses: sole trader and a company. Associate at Duncox Attorneys at Law, Jana Griffiths, joins us. Jana, good afternoon. Welcome to Home Run. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. The legal landscape always gives us some great information. So let's start off as we always do with the basics. Why or what is the main difference between a sole trader and a company?
Well, there are several differences, but arguably the main difference is the concept of separate legal personality. Separate legal personality means that a company is a legal entity that is separate from the owners and the managers of the company. That would be the shareholders and directors. So this means that the assets and the debts of the company are not the property or the personal responsibility of the directors or shareholders. And this contrasts with the sole trader, where the owner and the manager of the business is the same person, and the assets and debts of the business are the assets and debts of that same person.
So in a sense, it really is kind of straightforward, as it says, eh?
Right.
What it says on the tin. All right, so how do you register as a sole trader?
Okay, so the process for registering as a sole trader business is relatively quick and cheap. So a sole trader business is registered by submitting a business registration form at the Companies Office of Jamaica. Once the business is successfully registered, the Companies Office will issue a certificate of registration of business name, which is valid for 3 years, and it needs to be renewed every 3 years after that.
All right, again, I'm liking this. It's kind of simple. Is it the same for a company? How do you form a company?
So when registering a company, in addition to the business registration form that I mentioned earlier, you have to also submit the articles of incorporation of the company. The articles are basically the constitution of the company, which in simple terms governs how the company must operate. So after you submit those documents successfully, the COJ will then issue a certificate of incorporation confirming that the company has been formed. And unlike the sole trader registered business name, a company does not have an expiry date. However, the company will have annual maintenance costs. And also with a company, you need at least two persons to form a company, because if the company only has one director, that director cannot also be the company secretary, which is also necessary to form a company.
Yes. All right. What are the maintenance obligations then for the different models? Is that everything you've just explained?
Well, as I said before, the sole trader must renew his business name every 3 years. Mm-hmm. But with a company, the company has to file an annual return every year at the Companies Office. The annual return is basically a snapshot of the company for the year. So it will indicate the directors, the shareholders, the address of the company secretary, all those things like that for that year. Mm-hmm. A company also has to notify the Companies Office if there are any changes to the directors, the company secretary, the address, the share capital, etc. Also, a company is generally required to produce audited financial statements annually.
Mm-hmm. All right. Jana, I know that persons listening are definitely going to want me to ask you this. Do both models allow you to attract additional capital or new investors?
Well, the sole trader has limited ability to attract new capital. He can basically get a loan, but he would be personally liable for it. Or he could also invest more of his own money into the business. Mm-hmm. While on the other hand, for a company can obtain a loan in the company's name or attract equity financing by selling shares to existing or new shareholders. So in essence, a company can have multiple shareholders, so potentially multiple sources of equity financing.
Can I ask you as a point of interest at this point in time? If it's a bit difficult, you don't have to go into details, but just give us a yes or no. I have a listener asking me from St. Catherine, if a person registers as a sole trader, is it possible to change to a company? And if you can give an idea of the process.
Yes, you can form a company, just in the same process that I had mentioned before.
That you mentioned before. Mm-hmm.
Right. Submitting the relevant forms.
All right, great. So Pete, you've heard here, if you're a sole trader and you want to change, then it's quite possible, as we have prescribed before at the beginning. And, well, I guess leading from that into this, how do you close the business under the different models?
So for the sole trader, it's fairly simple. He would have to just submit a closure of business notice to the Companies Office of Jamaica. But for a company, depending on whether the company has any assets or debts at the time of the closure, the company may have to be liquidated, which in simple terms is selling off the assets of the company, or wound up, which is essentially closing down the operations of the company before it's terminated. Mm-hmm. However, liquidation can only be conducted by a licensed professional, and therefore there are associated fees that can be substantial when closing down.
All right. Well, you know what? There are so many persons who are listening right now, and the information you've given, as stated with the pre-read that we had with the number of companies coming into being, it's so important that we realize how to do what we do and to do it well, and we really have to thank you for joining us today. Again, we were speaking with Associate at Duncox Attorneys at Law, Jana Griffiths, and we're looking at starting a business and what are your options. I certainly hope you found it quite beneficial. Before you go, Jana, is there any hashtag did you know that you can share with us?
I don't think I have any today. Sorry, I had one last time. But next time for sure.
I'm sorry, can you say that again for me? I lost you there.
I said I can't think of any right now. I know I had one for you last time, but
yes,
for sure the next time.
Oh, all right. But you know what? I think you've been so informative with this, because we also have a response from our listener who said thank you so very much for responding for him with his question there. That no I think we'll use that as our hashtag today. If you're registered as a sole trader, it is possible to change to a company. And if you need to do that, just contact the authorities and they'll walk you through the models.
For sure.
All right. Thank you so very much. It has been another in the Legal Landscape series. Season 5 it is. Episode 9. What are your options with starting a business? Jana, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Associate at Duncox Attorneys at Law, Jana Griffiths, joining us for today's episode of The Legal Landscape.